What is the role of salt in health?
Salt is a major factor driving cardiovascular deaths worldwide. We have lots of studies on primitive populations that don't salt their foods, and those populations do not have heart disease or high blood pressure in the population. Now, we do get salt in natural foods. When you're eating fruits and vegetables and beans and cucumbers and lettuce, and we're eating food, there's sodium in there. And food has the sodium that the body needs. The question is, how much becomes excess? How much becomes harmful? Just like anything in excess can be harmful. And the answer to that is that when you take in low amounts of sodium, or the relatively low amounts in food, our body holds on to sodium. It doesn't sweat it out. Our sweat is water, not salt water. And we don't urinate out sodium. And when we eat too much sodium in our diet, added sodium, even if it's from a healthy salt, what people call a healthy salt, there's no such thing as a healthy salt, by the way. That's just a marketing scam, like Himalayan salt or salt from the Celtic Sea or salt from behind the moon or the Rock of Gibraltar or moon rocks. I don't care where it came from. It's still 2,300 milligrams of sodium per teaspoon, not per tablespoon. And the studies all show that you see longest lifespan and most protection against cardiovascular death when people eat less than 1,000 milligrams a day of sodium. So that our diet gives us 600 to 800 milligrams of sodium. We don't need any extra sodium. But as you start to go up above 1,000, it's different. Men and women are different. Maybe 800 for a female and 1,100 for a male, and then body size. But as you start to see sodium go up to higher levels, you see increased risk of cardiovascular death because salt causes intravascular hemorrhaging. It slowly weakens and damages the interior lining of the blood vessels over years of eating it. And a leading cause of death in plant-based eaters around the world, and a leading cause of death in Asian countries like rural China, is hemorrhagic stroke. And hemorrhagic stroke has an inverse relationship with cholesterol, meaning lower cholesterol, less animal products and lower cholesterol increases the risk of hemorrhagic stroke. So you don't protect yourself with a plant-based diet against stroke if you still eat salt, is the point. And that, remember I'm mentioning that there's no salt in the sweat because we're taking in low amounts, we're holding on to it. That means we can go exercise in the heat, play tennis, go for a run, do a triathlete, play basketball, sweat, and we're not going to get electrolyte deficient because we're not sweating out our electrolytes. So we're not going to cramp up when we're sweating because we're on a low salt diet. Because these people on a high salt diet, they excreting electrolytes in their sweat and their urine, they're not just eliminating the extra salt. The body can't remove the sodium without losing other beneficial electrolytes along with it. So they're just constantly being electrolyte deficient and magnesium and potassium and deficient because they're always having to get rid of the extra sodium they don't consume. That's why the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association recommend people with heart disease keep their sodium level down below 1,500 a day. And I'm saying that is so ridiculous for two reasons. Number one, because if it was right for a person with heart disease to keep their level below 1,500 a day, then why would we wait till a person have heart disease to cut their level down? Wouldn't we have the whole population do that? That's like telling a person who has lung cancer should stop smoking. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. They shouldn't just, Number two, if you read the 30-page document, which gives the references, the sign of references of why they came to that decision by the American College of Cardiology, they're saying right in the document that 1,500 is not ideal, that below 1,000 is ideal, and they just came to 1,500 because that was what they thought Americans were willing to accept. And if they recommended the ideal, that too many people would reject the whole thing and wouldn't even try to do it. So they came to a decision what was socially acceptable, not what was scientifically ideal. So right, I am advocating, to answer your question, yes, I advocate the SOS-free diet, sugar, oil, and salt-free. But that does, relatively salt-free. If you had a little mustard, a little tomato sauce that had, 100 milligrams a day added to the 800 you got in your food, it's not going to make a difference if you had an extra 100. But if you went to a restaurant and had a bowl of soup with 1,000 extra, you know what I mean? So, a little extra is not going to be any major factor, but it's relatively sodium-free.
So you're saying that if we were just to eat plant-based, we would naturally get 800 milligrams in our food alone?
Yes, we're getting about, I would say, about 400 milligrams of sodium per 1,000 calories you're consuming. So if you had 2,000 calories a day, you get about 800. needs 3,000 calories a day. They get more protein, they get more sodium. In other words, your needs are proportional. Your needs of electrolytes, your needs of protein, your needs of calories are all proportional to your caloric intake. When you need more calories, you need more protein, but you get it with the extra food. You know what I mean? So yes, about 400 milligrams per 1,000 calories.
So not that we should be eating packaged foods, but when we look at those packaged foods and it has the daily recommended amount, a daily recommended amount of sodium, and a soup has like 40% or 50% of your sodium for the day in it, we have to keep in mind that we're already getting 800 milligrams. So we really it's actually taking up a bigger percentage of what's left over. Does that make sense?
Yes, but also they're using what's daily acceptable is what's acceptable to on the general people, which is not the 1,500 generated by the American Heart Association. That's like 2,000 by the regular dietary recommendations. So they're advising you is still too much sodium. The general recommendations are not my degree, not my recommendations. They're saying that you should consume and you could consume too much sodium. So they're allowing you permissively to eat too much sodium.
Is potassium chloride a healthy salt alternative?
It's okay, but I still don't recommend it because it perpetuates a person's desire to want salty foods, and it maintains the deadening of your taste buds. See, people don't. You know what my favorite food is? Artichokes. I don't want anything on the artichoke. I just want plain, ordinary artichokes that were steamed. I just love plain celery. I just love zucchini that's lightly steamed, with nothing on it. I just love the flavor of the just the steamed zucchini. The point I'm making is, if you're salting your food and you're using these salt substitutes, then you're deadening your taste buds. So you never get to the point where you like vegetables as much as you should, because you're not tasting all the flavor in vegetables. You're not getting. So I'm saying that by getting you acclimated to it, it increases your taste muscle, the strength of your taste. And now there's more subtle flavors in vegetables and natural foods you can enjoy more by not exposing yourself to the extra sodium, by not using a salt substitute to take the place of the sodium.
So salt is known as a flavor enhancer, where it brings out the flavor in things. So we really should be looking at more kind of inverting that and saying that it's really a taste bud deadener, because it's overwhelming or overstimulating our taste buds and making everything else, their natural state, not taste very good because it doesn't have that added pop to it. Is that
That was very well said.
great? Thank you. So you mentioned sweating. And the late John McDougall mentioned, I think it was last year, that that you shouldn't smell, right? Like, there's so many products now for every area of the body because everyone smells everywhere. And he said you shouldn't smell. What are your thoughts on that? And what does it mean when you do smell? Like when you sweat?
Well, the sweat is an organ of elimination, as is our breathing. Our lung, we breathe, we urinate out poisons and toxins and extra urea and nitrogenous wastes, but we sweat out and we breathe out toxins as well. And the more toxic your body is, the higher the rates of nitrogenous waste from overeating animal products, and the more putrefaction you get in the digestive tract. You're producing more other unsavory chemicals from bacterial fermentation. So we're talking here about when you overeat calories, when you eat till you're full, now you are getting more. You're not digesting the food as well because you're short on digestive enzymes because you eat till you stretched out your stomach.
Mm.
So whether you're eating animal products or eating too much of one particular food, or you didn't chew very well, eating whatever it is you're doing, the more putrefaction, the more you add salt, the more you add meat, the more unhealthy your diet is, the more stuff is going to come out in your sweat and in your breath and in your urine, and making your urine smell more and your sweat smell more. So.
Okay, so that was very interesting, and I want to make sure I understood what you just said, which is when you overeat, you actually digest more poorly because your enzymes, the enzymes that would help break down your food in as part of the digestive process, you only have a finite amount. They get used up, so that food that would have been digested via those enzymes is less digested, and therefore has to be eliminated through the various ways, and could add to the odor. Is that?
Yes, you get more, you should say, putrefaction. You have more bacterial growth, overgrowth of bacteria small bowel bacterial overgrowth from overeating, and so we get just the right amount of bacteria, the most favored bacteria, when we eat the right amount of food. And then when we chew the food better, you're not just breaking down nutrients for better absorption, you're also mixing it with more endothelial growth factor that helps repair and make for a more robust lining of the digestive tract that's more resistant to acid degradation and more immune ability of the digestive tract to keep toxins out. Because the digestive tract is an orifice, is a tube outside of the body. It's really outside the body. And by chewing our food and mixing with saliva, that coating of the digestive tract helps protect, and the right bacteria growing keeps things out of the body in that tube that runs through the middle of our body.
So you talked about chewing multiple times, and just so people have a baseline, how many times should people consider chewing at a minimum? I mean, not that everyone's going to sit there and count, but just to say we should chew more is kind of amorphous. What would you say as a number?
Well, I don't know, because some people say, chew 25 to 30 times. But I'm saying I have different recommendations. My recommendations are having a mindful awareness of what the food feels like in your mouth. Because with chewing slow and chewing more, and try to resist swallowing and keep the food in your mouth till it feels like that it can't be chewed anymore, like it's liquefied. So I'm eating my salad and I'm not always remembering to chew that well, but I to keep reminding myself as I go to say, oh, the first half of the salad, I could have chewed better. I'm gonna really focus for the next 5 minutes and really chew this stuff to a complete liquid. I just keep reminding myself, keep it in there, keep chewing it, liquefying it, get the most out of it. Because I'm taking the time and the attention to include all these great things in. I cut up the scallion. I grew sprouts to put on there. I put pomegranate arils on there, were frozen. If I'm going to throw it all in there, I might as well try to get the maximum benefit from it by chewing it really well, which takes concentration.
Do people hate you for how long you take to eat?
No, because they're around me. I'm all surrounded by people who are all reminding each other. My wife and my kids and my people and my guests, they're all we're reminding each other, don't forget to chew good, so we're all I'm kind of hanging out with like-minded people.